In Laos, two brothers not older than in their late teens decided to go on a hunting trip one day. Armed with a Soviet-made high-powered rifle, they left their village one early morning and crossed 3 hills over onto a heavily forested valley that was supposedly rich with wildlife and game. Right away, the older brother, who was the more experienced hunter, noticed something was strangely wrong. There was not a single bird flying or chirping as they approached the valley. The wind was blistering on that particular day. A very faint smell of rotten flesh was ever so slightly present with each whiff of breath he took. Nevertheless, the excitement of the hunt and the sun hanging high in the sky surpassed any wariness that he had. The more careless younger brother, too eager, had started entering the forest already, with the older brother right behind. They enthusiastically scanned for any movement that would give them a purpose to use the rifle. After every dozen or so yards, the older brother would take his Hmong knife and mark the side of a tree. Soon, they realized that they were deep in the jungle, surrounded by a primeval forest that partially blocked out the sun in most parts. The smell of rotten flesh reeked and hung heavy around that area. This scared the brothers collectively. That is when the older brother noticed the tracks on the dirt beneath their feet. He carefully removed the foliage around the track, and his eyes bulged. He felt his heart skip a beat, and he swallowed a dry gulp. They were standing on top of fresh tiger tracks. A tiger had passed the exact spot they were standing on merely minutes ago. They looked at each other briefly, but not one word was exchanged, as the two were too petrified to say anything. Quickly, they tried to make their way back out the forest. From near a distance, the low growl of a tiger broke the eerie silence around them. The two brothers instinctively squatted low next to a tree to get out of its field of vision. The older brother scanned around their proximity hastily. The tiger sensed their presence but had not discovered their exact location yet. But it was actively sniffing around, trying to pinpoint where the two brothers were. They could hear the rustling of leaves being parted by something big headed their way. The older brother acted fast. He swiftly grabbed his younger brother and forcibly pushed him up the tree. As soon as the younger brother secured himself on top of the tree, the older brother handed the rifle up. Not a moment too soon, as the tiger leapt up and mauled the older brother as soon as the younger brother grasped the rifle. The younger brother was shocked and scared, almost dropping the weapon in a frantic ascent up higher in the tree. The tiger had a deathly grip on the older brother's neck. It was squeezing the life out of the older brother. Then, the older brother finally stopped moving as the tiger let go and started licking its prey. The younger brother, traumatized by the ordeal, stood as silent as he could, too scared to move and too scared to even cry. It must have been luck that the tiger did not see the younger brother up on the tree, or maybe it was too busy feeding on the flesh of the older brother that it did not care at the moment. The younger brother stood for what felt like an eternity, devastated by the loss of his brother. Finally, he raised the rifle up to his shoulder. He put the iron sight squarely on the head of the tiger and squeezed the trigger. A loud boom echoed throughout the valley as the 7.62 by 54mm steel-jacketed round exploded out from the rifle bore at supersonic speed towards the tiger. A loud bellow came from the tiger as it jumped at least 10 feet in the air and landed on its side, breathing heavily. Whether it was inexperience or from being in shock, the shot had missed the tiger in the head and landed somewhere in the lower body area. Still, the tiger laid motionless and had not moved at all. Not knowing for sure, the younger brother slid the breech bolt back as the spent cartridge flung out and another slid in its place. This time, he braced the rifle next to the tree and put the iron sight squarely on the head of the tiger and squeezed the trigger. The second shot hit its mark on the head as the tiger jerked hard to one side and landed at an odd angle on the ground again as dirt and debris flung up from behind the tiger's head. Slowly, the younger brother gathered enough courage and descended down the tree, keeping an eye steadfast on the tiger. He cautiously moved towards his former older brother and openly wept at his lifeless body, half eaten. As anger and rage overtook fear and emotion, he put another 3 rounds point blank into the tiger, emptying the rifle. He knelt down and silently said a prayer to his brother's lifeless body, promising to return with help to remove him from this cursed valley. He followed his older brother's markings back out of the jungle and ran as fast as he could back home. The next morning, a large group of men, including the younger brother and their father, arrived in the valley to retrieve the older brother's body. The older brother's lifeless body still laid where it had partially been consumed, and not far laid the tiger's body as well. Before leaving the valley, the father decided to skin the tiger and pack the hide to take away home. When they arrived back at the village, they unraveled the tiger hide for all the villagers to see. Upon closer examination, there was only a single bullet hole on the belly area by the hip of the tiger hide. The younger brother was confused and shaking his head. He assured his father that he had successfully hit the tiger with all 5 rounds. Finally, a shaman was asked to come and examine the hide, and he had this to say. The other 4 shots did hit the tiger, but the tiger's banzong were there to protect the body. The spirits had not noticed the younger brother up in the tree initially. They were only able to partially deflect the very first shot from hitting the head of the tiger, and the bullet had penetrated the lower part of the tiger's body instead. If the father had not skinned the tiger, it would have likely eventually recovered and gotten back up. The family buried the older brother, and no one dared to go into that valley ever again. Interested in sharing your stories? Submit them to HmongChronicles@gmail.com or in the description below. Here is the next story. Thank you. Hmong people have legends saying that some people have a history of becoming a tiger when they die. One of my aunts had a history of becoming tiger-like when she had died. My parents came to the USA 2 decades ago with my grandma, my uncle, and his wife and 3 kids. My aunt started to get really sick. She couldn't walk and was bedridden for a few months. One day, my aunt had a cat-like tail growing on the back of her tailbone and 2 horns growing on her forehead. There would be cats everywhere around their apartment complex. Cats would be making cat cries all night long. One day, my aunt had a major seizure attack. Her eyes rolled back and her eyes turned white. My aunt would do that for a couple of seconds and then turn back to being normal, but she did seem to be in pain after she had the seizures. She then would begin to laugh and point at the walls and at the corner of the room, saying, "There, there." My mom was really terrified seeing my auntie turn into a cat-like being. My mom says that there would be days my aunt would eat food and put out her tongue very long and say, so good. My dad told me that one day she was having many seizure attacks, so my dad had to put his arm inside of her mouth so that she wouldn't bite her tongue. During this time, she bit my dad's arm like a mad dog. My uncle and the elders got a hold of her and she let go of my dad's arm. My dad said that the bite was terrifying and strong. He felt a lot of pain, but at least he helped my aunt from choking and biting her own tongue. She lived for a few more days. The very last night before my aunt passed away, many cats cried outside of the apartment that night. My aunt was also making cat cries, imitating their calls. When my uncle tried to talk to her, she would say, if I get free, I'll eat each and every one of you." My mom said that my aunt was turning into a wild tiger-like devil the night before she passed away. My uncle and the elders had to use ropes to tie her down. It was a sad thing to do, but if they didn't tie her down, she could hurt anyone. My aunt kept on licking her tongue and rolling her eyes white. Every so often, she would growl and make cat-like noises. She fought long and hard to get free from the ropes, but she just kept on saying that, if I get out, I'll eat you all. Everyone got so scared that they held her down even tighter until she let go of her last breath. When my aunt was about to take her last breath, suddenly there was the sound of cats crying at every corner of the room, yet they did not see any cats anywhere. When my aunt took her last breath, she was confirmed dead. The whole place was silent. No more cat cries. My mom said that perhaps one day my cousins may end up like their mother, a tiger. Do you guys believe that? Let me know in the comment section below if you do. I would like to share a tiger story. I heard it from my dad and wish to reshare it with everyone. A long time ago in Laos, there was a boy who did not listen to his parents and would always go out at night, not coming home until early in the morning. His parents told him that if he kept on going out and coming home late at night, he would regret it. So one night, he went very far to another village and came back home. It was dark by the time he got to a farmhouse. There were piles of hay laying around. The boy didn't want to sleep in the farmhouse because there was no cover. Instead, he decided to gather some piles of hay and slept in them. Later that night, he woke up to sounds of banzong and tigers sniffing around. He peeked outside and saw a few banzong and tigers. They were digging through some of the piles of hay where he was at earlier when he was gathering them. The boy got so scared that he started to pray to all of his ancestors. He prayed and cried so hard. In a bit, there was a huge tiger that came and sat on top of his hay pile where he was hiding. For a moment there, he almost had a heart attack because this tiger was bigger and more ferocious than the rest. While the tiger sat on top of him, he peeked outside and saw another tiger pounce on another pile of hay. When the tiger pounced on the hay, he could hear the banzong laughing out of excitement because they thought that they were close. They kept on pouncing on the hay until he was the last one left. The other tigers came near, but they were too afraid of the big tiger. Every time the other tigers came close, the big tiger would roar and growl at them. The others would back off but circle the pile of hay where he was under. He was so scared that he didn't sleep all night. Morning came and the other tigers left. As soon as the other tigers left, the big tiger got off of the hay he was under and left as well. When he saw that the coast was clear, he got up and checked all around him. All other piles of hay had some mouse or rats under them, and that's why the tigers were there. They killed and ate all the rats, and there was blood everywhere. The boy ran as fast as he could and got back to the village and told his parents about the story. They yelled at him and told him that since he was praying, that might have been his grandpa that came in the form of the big tiger. This was because his dad had a dream that their grandpa had came to them and told them that his son would be fine because he will be watching over him. Ever since then, he learned his lesson not to come home so late at night. This story is from my mom's grandpa back in Laos, my great-grandpa. My mom is a Moa, and it's known to her family that after death they turn into tigers. That was what exactly happened to my great-grandfather. It was right before when the war broke out in Laos. I forgot how my great-grandpa passed away, but he left his family at an early age. It was a harsh time because of the war. Daily, refugees were on the move towards Longyang. The communists haven't gotten to my great-grandpa's village yet, but right when my great-grandpa passed away, strange things started to happen. Every night, my great-grandma and her kids would hear the sounds of a tiger growling outside of their house. At first, they were scared to death. During that time, there were two things to be afraid of: the communist and the supernatural. So early in the morning, my great-grandma would go outside to check. There, she would find a dead wild boar. As time went on, the same things would happen, but with different new animals, like wild chicken, birds, and squirrels would be outside of her door the next morning. My great-grandmother had a dream that it was my great-grandpa who did it. He said that he missed him so much, and he became a tiger after death. He didn't want the family to starve, so he went and hunted food for the family, like how he always did in life. So, my great-grandmother accepted the food. This went on for a while, but all good things come to an end. The communists were closing in on their village. The villagers were moving out of the village. My great-grandmother and her family were some of the last ones out. One night, my great-grandma had another dream again about my great-grandpa. He came and told them that it was time for him to go, and he won't be able to hunt for them any longer. She said that it was alright, since the family had to move away soon. Sad, my great-grandpa was crying and told her that he loved them and then went away. The next morning, my great-grandma took all the kids and headed towards Longyang. To this day, I don't know if the village still stands or not, but my great-grandmother passed away some time after the war ended. All of my aunts and uncles are in Thailand and in the USA. That's a pretty sweet story. My grandpa treated me as I was his own, telling me stories of his past, giving me money, anything a grandpa would do. But the one thing that he told me that I'll never forget was, he'll come back as a tiger to scare my brothers and them because he does not like them as a family, and that he would wait outside for them when they came back home late as usual. My grandpa was basically living with my brother and his family and did not like them at the time. When he told me this, I was shocked and couldn't say anything because I can't do anything to stop this. I slept at my brother's house every weekend because they have everything I need there: Wi-Fi, PS4, computer, good food, basically everything I wanted and needed. My brother knows that I stayed there over the weekend, so they would always come home late. Years went by and my grandpa passed away. Even months after his funeral, what he told me about coming back as a tiger would not get out of my head. On a Friday night, I was on the PS4 playing Black Ops 3 with one earphone on my left ear, and my right ear had nothing, it was open. I had the game on all audio, which all sounds go to my left ear through the earphone, and the house was completely quiet. Toward my right, with my open ear, I could hear what sounded like a tiger crying. Not a cat or kitten, or even a baby. It was exactly a baby tiger. And of course, I thought of nothing because there's a park across the house. But then again, I have never heard a cry like that before. Being curious, I went and checked through the curtains of the window, and I saw that there was nothing. There was also a streetlight outside the house, and it was clear to see in the dark. As I went back to gaming, I heard it again. And that's when it hit me that I was alone in the house with no one, and I remembered what my grandpa told me. I didn't care much, but I also wanted to check again. As soon as I got up and walked towards the window, I started to hear it less and less. This led me to trying to walk back and forth. Yes, exactly what I thought. It got louder when I'm far and less when I'm close. I did this multiple times to make sure, and it was exactly what I thought. I walked up to the door and opened it and said, "Grandpa, stop scaring me because it's just me alone in the house. If you're gonna scare my brother and them, then please scare them instead and not me." After I said that, I slammed the metal door loudly and went back to gaming. It was quiet after that. Every weekend was quiet from there on, and I was relieved. I don't know why I told my grandpa to scare them instead. Now I feel like I'm bad to my family, but after this, it all stopped.